Houston, we have a podcast. Welcome to the official podcast of the NASA Johnson Space Center, episode 16, Spacesuits. I'm Gary Jordan, and I'll be your host today. So if you're new to the show, this is where we bring in NASA experts, scientists, engineers, astronauts, all to tell you the coolest parts about what's going on here at NASA. So Alley-Oop on Twitter is asking if we can do an episode on spacesuits. Well, thanks for your suggestion, Alley-Oop. Let's do it. Today we're talking spacesuits with Les Padilla. He's the EMU hardware manager at the NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. And that just means he manages the hardware on those classic white spacesuits you see when you think about astronauts. We had a great discussion about how those spacesuits work, what they're made of, how they've evolved over time, and what they'll look like in the future. So with no further delay, let's go light speed and jump right ahead to our talk with Mr. Les Padilla. Enjoy.
T-minus 5 seconds and counting. Mark. Launch commit lights are correct. There she goes. Houston, we have a podcast.
It's exciting. I like to explain to others. I feel like a kid in a candy store when they ask about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is all supposed to see the past, where it came from, and the future designs where we may be headed towards.
That's right, and that's what we're going to talk about today. All of those things.
All
so
right.
I see you have like a large binder of notes. It's actually one page, it's fine. But yeah, so we're going to talk about it all today. So first of all, spacesuits. Let's start from like the overarching, like, what is a spacesuit? Why do you need a spacesuit? I think the closest thing that I've been described is like, think of it like a spaceship that's shaped like a human body. Is that kind of right?
That's a fantastic description right there.
Cool.
A lot better and a lot shorter than I could have said it.
Okay, so what are they? Why a spacesuit? Why do we need that? Why can't we just use a fancy spacecraft with like arms on it or something like that?
Yeah. So at some point, people before us decided we want to go to space, and then after that, they decided going to space wasn't enough. We want to go extravehicular, outside the space. Whatever spaceship it is, from shuttle to station to before those Mercury missions, all the way in the early days. And the space suits, the purpose of it is to be a sort of, as you said, a miniature aircraft, but allows mobility, flexibility, maneuverability, so that a crew member can move around, whether they're doing work or just experiencing the environment out there. Like in the early days of the earlier days in Gemini, when they went out the door.
That's right, and white.
Yeah, absolutely. You got it. Just experiencing the environment. Did not want to come back in.
Yeah.
Or later days, even where we are right now with the International Space Station, where there's maintenance activities, and there is we've already completed the assembly, so it's maintenance activities where we're at. We need to be able to go out there and do more than just fly around and enjoy the scenery. We need to be able to turn bolts. We need to be able to pull out large batteries and put them back in. And so you need something that offers dexterity and yet protection from the very harsh space environment.
You know, we just saw that because we just did the spacewalk the other day, right? That was the second of 3 planned ones, and that was when they were putting on some of the shields and everything.
Absolutely.
And they did some robotic work, right, with the station's robotic arm. They took the pressurized mating adapter, moved it to a new place, but they needed human hands to actually like connect the cables and actually put on the shield. So it makes sense, right? You need the suits because there's just some things that just robots can't do, I guess, right?
Yeah, not yet, not where we are today.
Right.
You can't go to space without EVA.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so go back to Ed White and Gemini. That was the first one was I just had it. I want to say June 1965. There it is.
There it
okay.
is.
All right. Yeah. He came out and they actually used like the air gun to move around, and super famous video of watching him just drift out, and he has the umbilical and he's got the air. So what was I gotta ask, what is the point of that air gun thingy? And then why do we not see anyone use those anymore?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
And so there's probably people wiser and more experienced that have extra details on that, but at a high general level, it's just directional control. So you're out there in space, there is, we say no gravity. There is some gravity, but it's microgravity, very low, and for all intents and purposes, you're free falling towards the Earth. And so unless you're holding on to a handrail or your vehicle itself, you will continue to float in the gravitational pull that circles the Earth and begin to bring you down. So as soon as you go out that door, you've got to have a way, it could be a tether or a rope to pull you back in, but a way to maneuver around the area you want to go. And so the air gun provides a small propulsion capability to navigate.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. So, okay, they're going out and they're using the air gun, but now I guess they have, it took them a while, right, during the Gemini, that was kind of a lot of the point of the Gemini program was to figure out how to do stuff like this, right? And how to do space rendezvous and how to do spacewalks. It took them a while, right? So that was Gemini 4 was when Ed White came out. And then it wasn't until Gemini 12, Buzz Aldrin had put in some procedures for neutral buoyancy laboratory training where they actually train in the water to see how they can move around because everyone was getting sort of tired when they were going out because they didn't have the procedures yet, and then they finally nailed it for Gemini 12, right?
Yeah. Yes, spacewalks are tough jobs. The astronauts are just amazing the way they do work so seamlessly, and as trained professionals, they make it seem easy. But inside those suits, because I've seen the suits come out, there's a lot of sweat in there. There's a lot of hard work that goes on for those astronauts. And it is not easy. And as you said, training on the ground is pivotal to be able to make those activities look seamless on orbit.
Yeah, I'm totally not following the script right now, but I mean, so the MBL training that they do it in the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, super big pool.
Yes.
They have one-to-one scale mock-ups of the outside of the International Space Station, so when they actually go up there, and they, in the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, they train in a spacesuit pretty much, and so they know exactly how it feels and where things are, and they know how to move from place to place and use proper tools. Because once you're out there, you got to know kind of what you're doing and what to expect, because you might encounter some hurdles, and there have been some hurdles in the past.
There have been, absolutely. On that Neutral Buoyancy Lab, I mean, you're right. They actually train in a spacesuit that is almost exactly like the ones they fly in. Small little differences, like the white backpack, which is the engine of the spacesuit, the primary life support system. In the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, it is just a hollow shell, and we have umbilicals that, long hoses that supply the air and the power to the suit.
Right.
And the tools will have things that are changed on them to make them more neutral buoyant, so they'll float in water and don't sink directly down to the bottom of the pool. But overall, it is, as you pointed out, just like the flight hardware, and the suits are very similar to what they use on orbit, so they can train and be prepared. Because as you noted on, there is no go out the door and I'm not quite sure what I'm doing here. Let's go in and plan it another day.
Figure it out. Oh, I can't do it. I guess we'll come out again. Because, it takes a long time, right? I mean, I was listening to Shane the other day, because he just landed a couple days ago at the time of this recording. And he was saying, it takes hours of prep work beforehand, right? Like 4 hours. They got to pre-breathe. They got to do all these things, put on the suit. And then they go out, and it's another 7-ish hours that they're out there. Then they come back, and then they have a 2-hour, debrief. I mean, that's a long day. He called it one of the most challenging, especially physically and mentally challenging things about flying in space.
Yeah,
I can imagine. And especially, I mean, that's what they train for, right? In the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, they do 6-hour runs or something like that. Kind of the same. They do some prep work beforehand, but they get used to it, and they do a lot of that training.
So I've never been, obviously, out the door in space. I've never been an astronaut in that aspect. But Gary, one of the best ways that I've, I guess, can describe what you just said is, have you ever gone skydiving?
I have. One time.
Yes, then
One
you know.
time.
So the stimuli, when you make that decision of, all right, I'm about to get out of a perfectly good airplane, and you go out, just everything going on, it is, the first time you go, it's very hard to concentrate.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of good with that tandem thing, the guy telling you, look at your altimeter. But imagine free falling like that for 7 hours straight while having to do maintenance work on the space station and watch, your display control module on your EMU and listen to people on the ground and inside the station, and that's just a shadow of the difficulty, the job that those guys do.
Okay, well, when I went out the door for whenever I went skydiving, my legs went weak, and I had the guy strapped to my back, and he had to push forward to the end of the door and actually push me out. He did the whole instead of we're gonna go out on 3,
That's
1,
right.
2, and then we went out. So I was totally weak, but I can't even imagine, because my heart dropped on that first run, and then it was thrilling for a while. But I mean, everything happened so fast. And now, like you said, take that and then stretch it over super long period. I can only imagine. Okay, so let's take a step back and let's go back to kind of where I was originally supposed to go. But talking about spacesuits, and first of all, why do you need it? You know, you need the dexterity, obviously, but there's a human aspect to that, right? You can't just, you know what, something's broken on the outside, let's just go out the hatch and go torque it, what am I saying? Torque it with a wrench or something and fix it. You need, like you said, you hinted at life support a while back with the backpack. So what's it about? This may seem a bit obvious of a question, but what's it about space that the human body cannot just go out and do tasks in?
Sure, and I think most people could tell you that space, it's a dangerous environment, but why is it? As we're getting at, well, the spacesuit provides the capability to regulate temperature. In the low Earth orbit, as we call it, where the International Space Station is, temperature ranges during EVA days can swing from negative 148 degrees, so that's 148 degrees Fahrenheit below zero, up to 248 degrees. And those are estimates. They can be higher or lower, but that's a huge window that the human anatomy was not designed to work within without protection.
I feel like Houston, Texas can get up to about positive 248 degrees, but I know it's not even close.
But not negative 148 though.
No, not even not even 148 to me. But you're right. That's intense. So how does the spacesuit protect from that, from the extreme negative and positive temperatures?
Yeah, so there's a lot of planning up front in choosing days that we go EVAs, we call it, extravehicular activities, spacewalks.
We try to stay away from those acronyms, but yes, spacewalks.
We choose special days that have the least impact, more habitable conditions, a better way to put it. But at the end of the day, even on the best days, temperature swings when the sun's looking at you to when the sun's behind the station are large swings that can be 100 degrees. And so that's where the spacesuit comes into play. And the spacesuit was designed to work in these environments. The outer layer is white because it reflects heat. Little simple things like that.
Okay, now you know why the spacesuits are white.
There you go. Whereas if it was black, it would absorb the heat, get a lot hotter quicker, make it hard for the performance of the suit and the individual inside. The multiple insulation layers on the suit itself. There are 7 layers of insulation within the outer layer of the spacesuit. And without getting into details, those are specifically to reflect heat and protect the crew members and keep in the proper environment heat that's necessary inside the suit.
Okay.
So it may be hot out there, but when that sun goes behind station, it gets very cold. That crew member wants a certain amount of heat kept within that spacesuit.
I would think so, yeah.
Absolutely.
Negative 148 is pretty cold.
But lower levels of that spacesuit is the bladder itself, and that gets into one of the next important aspects of the suit is providing an oxygen environment.
Right.
You've got to be able to breathe in space, and there is a 100% oxygen environment inside the suit. And as Gary knows, and we talked about I think briefly before, 100% oxygen environment is not natural. That's not what we experience down here in ambient or 1 atmosphere pressure, where we get, was it 78% nitrogen?
Nitrogen, yeah, and a little bit of carbon dioxide, just a tiny bit?
Just a tiny bit, tiny bit. But when the lower pressure inside the suit pressure is 4.3 psi when we go on spacewalks.
And that's about the pressure we feel here on Earth?
The pressure we feel here on Earth is 14.7.
Whoa, okay, so a little bit lower.
So almost a third, almost close to a fourth of that.
Okay, so what would that feel like? What's the next comparable thing of what 4 psi would feel like to like us here on Earth?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah, hard to compare, right?
That's a tough one because I've been inside of a suit, so I know what it feels like, but I haven't been inside something else that has that 4 psi of pressure that I could do a one-for-one comparison of. I would say putting multiple gloves on.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
multiple
so it's really strenuous on your hands.
It absolutely.
Okay.
When you're out compared to a near zero pressure environment like the space is, 4.3 it's fatiguing. You have pressure on your hands, your body to move. You have 4.3 pounds of pressure over all of your body that you're working against.
Pretty stiff.
That is.
Yeah.
Compare that to the Russian Orlan, their suit, it's 5.8 psi. That's even more difficult.
Wow.
You compare that to some other space suits that we've looked at in the past that are even higher pressure, and you can see why we need low psi. And so 4.3 is not perfect with zero resistance, but it's a nice sweet spot that our crew members are able to work. And those that have ran in both the Russian suit and the American spacesuit have said, yeah, it's a lot easier, this 4.3 psi.
Okay.
Yeah. But that drives us to why the oxygen's at 100%. At that lower pressure,
Right.
we need the 100% oxygen.
Oh, okay. So that's how you counter. We're in the 14-something psi
Yep.
here, so
Lower
in order
oxygen concentration.
lower oxygen. Okay,
Yes.
that makes and that brings us back to the pre-breathing that we kind of alluded to earlier.
Yes,
you need
sir.
to kind of purge your body of nitrogen. Is that's
That's
why?
right.
Okay.
That's right. Otherwise, the oxygen toxicity is the concern if you don't go through that pre-breathe protocol.
Okay. All right. Well, awesome. That explains why you need the pressure that you do. Okay. But I guess if you were to drop it any lower, it would be a little bit hazardous to your health, right? Like 4.3 is probably the sweet spot.
4.3 is a sweet spot with what our current spacesuit is certified to.
Oh.
You can adjust it different ways. I mean, it's kind of like if you change the pressure, now you got to play with the oxygen. You got to play with what is the suit capabilities at that level. 4.3 is the perfect sweet spot for what this suit is certified for.
Ah, I see. Oh, which is doing work on the outside of the International
Absolutely.
Space Station. Cool.
Yep.
Very cool. So, you're outside. We alluded to the fact that we're in low Earth orbit, right? It means we're in the microgravity environment. Tiny
Yes.
bit of gravity, not too much. Is it fair to say a little bit of atmosphere, too? Just like tiny
Bit.
Yeah, that's why we need to boost the station every once in a while.
Yes.
It's like a tiny little bit of drag. But
Little drag.
how much are we protected from the Earth's, I guess, magnetic sphere? How much do we have to worry about radiation at that altitude?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely a great question, and it's a great concern.
Yeah.
There's a reason that crew members are limited for how long they can stay up on the International Space Station. That's one of the players, and there's the health themselves. Radiation, I guess the most high-level way to describe it is subatomic particles that are supercharged. We get from the sun, we get from outside our Milky Way galaxy, and that can come in, and they just tear right through your DNA. And that can be acute if there's large doses of radiation, which fortunately aren't a concern where we work in the low Earth orbit. But over a long-term exposure, it could be chronic effects that, when you rearrange the DNA, could lead to cancer or other diseases. So it's very serious. We have a team dedicated to radiation, making sure we protect our crew members. The spacesuit is designed to provide some level of protection when they're out there for that limited spacewalk in the International Space Station. The space station itself is also designed to protect the crew members from certain levels of radiation that we get from solar wind from the sun.
Okay, all right, yeah. So I guess that the suit is designed for what for that purpose.
For that purpose of limited spacewalks.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, so how is that different from other, I guess, extravehicular suits? The suit itself has evolved over time, right? But I think it's the technology is sort of adapted from 1970s technology, and then they just made it a little bit better, right?
Sure. Yeah, so you have, we can go right through them. You have the, all the way back from the Mercury suits, the first ones we went up there with inside the Mercury, and those were completely designed for, hey, the crew members are staying inside this vehicle, but in case we have cabin depressurization, we need the guys to have a suit so they can exist for hopefully a period of time to get the cabin back pressurized. Those were early suits. Even step before that, we had pressurized suits for our for pilots or balloonists that were going high altitude.
Right. Yeah, and we still do, right? We
Absolutely.
have pilots over at Ellington Field here in Texas that wear those pressurized suits for the WB-57s, those high-altitude planes.
Yep.
So I guess, are they technically in space at that altitude? I think they are, right? 60. Is it 60 miles that is like you're technically in space?
You're getting beyond my knowledge here. I don't want to get lost. Someone may be listening.
You hear things, but yeah. But I know they do wear the suits, and they have to and they have to do the whole same things the astronauts do. They have to pre-breathe and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so
that's where spacesuits started from. That was
Right.
the first stepping stone, was high altitude flying.
yeah. So I guess those Mercury suits that you were talking about, is that where kind of the launcher and entry suits kind of went towards? Was if whenever you're launching in a spacecraft, you have to wear a specific suit in case of that, right?
Sure.
Sudden depressurization. Is that like the reason?
So absolutely, the Mercury suit was that's we stand on the shoulders of those who designed that Mercury suit.
Yeah.
And the next suit with the Gemini, after that, and the next one after that, and all the way to Apollo. Yes, absolutely. Do those provide data and insight towards the ACES suit, or the launch and entry suits that we're now working on for next vehicles.
Oh, right.
So yes, data from those suits was pivotal to make our current launch and entry suits. One of the most, the Gemini suit that came after the Mercury, that was the one that Ed White went out EVA in.
Yeah.
That's the most polarizing, or one of the most well-known ones that you'll see in a lot of the old movies with the aluminized nylon outer covering where it's all shiny and a lot of zippers here and there.
Chrome.
Yes. Every movie that ever had science fiction related to it, my parents watched, I remember seeing the shiny suits.
Yeah.
And so that's Gemini.
Yeah.
To set the tone on that. And the reason for the shiny suits was they were, in that time, we had a lot of data, but the big concerns were thermal and radiation, as we were talking on earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see that aluminized material on that Gemini suit early on, because they really wanted to make sure, hey, our guys are protected. And so they went all out. As we got more data and we figured out what we needed and where we needed to grow in and where we didn't need so much, you saw that aluminized, shiny aluminum outer nylon. It went away.
Right. So. Yeah. Now we see the white suit. Yeah.
You got it.
All right. Yeah. And then we saw the famous white ones like on the moon, walking on the surface of the moon.
The Apollo suits.
The Apollo suits.
Yeah.
And then we now we have the white suits on the International Space Station that we use all the time. So kind of going through a little bit of the features of those suits. I've always wanted to know, like, whenever you look at a spacesuit, first thing I think your eyes go to is that shield, that gold shield. What is that?
Yeah, so I think the term is goldized.
Ooh,
yes.
Goldized. I like that.
That gold visor is basically very fancy sunglasses.
Cool.
So the visor itself is a Lexan material that you'll find in some of your household goods. It is specifically to protect the crew member's eyes from the sun.
Okay.
And so there's a gold sheet that goes over that. It has great characteristics in blocking harmful UV rays and other rays that would come from the sun and help the astronaut continue to be able to work in that spacewalk environment.
Mm-hmm. But they can kind of pull it up right during nighttime. It's like sunglasses, right? If you walk from the outside to inside and it's suddenly dark, you take your sunglasses off. So it's kind of like
sure. They got a cool knob on the side of the helmet. You just flip that visor up, and what's really neat is there are opaque visors on the side that we rarely see in pictures.
Right.
Most pictures you want to see the face, or at least the cool gold visor, but there are completely opaque white visors that can cover, maybe if the sun's on your right side, can block on the right or the left or halfway down the front. And then the gold visors, you pointed up, can completely cover your face if full sun, or partially, or just completely remove it altogether. Slides back behind the helmet bubble underneath.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm thinking about the picture of, I wanted to say it's on Apollo 17, right, where you have I think it's Gene Cernan, posing, and then he has two of those opaque visors down on the
I'm
moon.
with you. Yep,
yeah, and he's got the Earth behind him or something.
You got it.
I'm thinking about that picture right now. So if you don't know that picture, go look that one up, because that's what he's talking about with those opaque visors. It's like those white shields that come down on the sides.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and the Apollo suits are the first suits with that famous fishbowl type helmet. And what I mean by that, if you look at your earlier suits, they have round visors that are fixed, but they're more oval or smaller in shape, so it's limited view. When the Apollo suits, and you'll see it on the current suits on the station, you have the full fishbowl helmet, so you can almost have a complete view side to side in front, a little above, limited below by the neck ring, but a much bigger field of view from the Apollo and the current suits we have today.
That sounds like the perfect reason to do it, right? So they learned. They said, I would like to have a bigger field of view, so they designed a helmet. And now I can see a lot more. So let's think. I think that one of the things that I always want to ask is, I'm sure you're outside doing a spacewalk for hours, right? Your nose has to get itchy, right?
Man, my nose would get itchy.
How do you, like, what if you just feel like an itch? Like, where do you go?
Yeah, so
don't they have like Velcro or something, like hard Velcro they can scrap their nose on or something?
So there's something called a Valsalva. It's a strange name, but it's kind of without getting too deep into details, it's a foam block that's fixed inside the helmet on the neck ring.
Okay.
Now the purpose of this item that's called the Valsalva, is for when you're going through pre-breathe, when you're pressurizing the suit before going out the door. Like when you're going up an airplane, one step back and cabin starts pressurizing, your ears can pop. That's uncomfortable for us flying on a plane, and especially for someone inside of a spacesuit. Only they can't grab their nose and blow the air out to equal the pressurization. So they have these Valsalvas that can fit on their nose, and they can kind of serves the purpose of blocking the nasal passage so that they can make sure their ears don't pop. So you can swallow, or you can push down your nose on this block to equalize the pressure in there. And all that long story to say, if you can reach your nose down there and scratch it on that block, that could be an option. Otherwise, you're out of luck.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even think about that. Like, I was thinking about, itching your nose. But, of course, like, what if your ears have to pop? Now you have the thing to do that, too.
Absolutely.
That's pretty cool.
Like you said earlier, it's through these generations of suit evolution they've learned along the way with great crew feedback of, hey, we need this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, you've been doing space, the first spacewalk was, we said in 1965.
That's right.
So, you have a lot to learn since the mid-60s to now, obviously. So what about, again, thinking about you're outside for that long, when do you eat? Do you eat beforehand? Like right beforehand? Like before, after the pre-breathe? Like, I would just get so hungry. I have to eat like every 2 or 3 hours.
I'm with you, Gary. That's probably the only reason we're not astronauts. We've got to eat every 2 or 3 hours.
That would, honestly, everything else I qualify
That's
for,
right, yeah.
obviously.
Same thing
but
here, of course.
I have to eat every 2 or 3 hours, so I can't.
So I would say that's crew member specific. Where you see is, I don't know about you, but when I would run marathons, I had friends that could eat a burger before a marathon with no problem. That's not this guy.
Not this guy either. No way.
And so, same thing with crew members. You have some that, they have a lot of time earlier on where it's recommended do not eat past this time. And there are some that'll eat right up along that barrier, and there are some that will stop eating way before that. Because naturally, when you eat, not only does it supply energy to your body, but it also causes normal bodily functions as well. Which leads into another discussion.
That's right. Let's go into that one. So 7 hours again. You're out there for a long time. You gotta go to the bathroom. What do they do?
Yeah, that's a call that you have to answer. And so,
right.
Unfortunately, as we said earlier, when you're out in a spacewalk, you can't just say, hey, John, I'm going to head inside and hit the John. You're stuck out there for the duration.
Oh yeah, and every moment is planned, right? So
that's right.
You can't. You have to just do your thing.
Yes, absolutely. And so there is no toilet inside the suit. They have an acronym would be the MAG, and it's basically an absorption garment.
Is M maximum?
You got it, my
All right,
friend. You
maximum.
You got it.
Bring that absorbency up to maximum.
So it's basically a very large Depends diaper that they'll wear during these spacewalks. Now, I can tell you, anyone who's been inside the suit has zero desire to use that diaper.
Yes, I can.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
But every single one of them is glad it's there if they get that call.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I could totally see that. And there's water too in the suit in case you get thirsty.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Same thing with the marathon. You've got to have hydration.
Right.
And so they have what they call disposable in-suit drink bags. Sits right here on the chest. Actually velcros to the liquid and cooling ventilation garment, which is how they get the coolant inside the suit. Over 300 feet of little tubes run over their entire body that can provide warm or cool water that the crew member can adjust as they prefer on a temperature control valve right on the front of the suit.
It's like a space version of air conditioning.
That's right.
Yes.
Little thermostat right there. Just a twist knob instead of digital.
I'm too cold. I'm just going to turn the heat up. Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, cool.
Well, sitting on top of that is that bag with water.
Yeah.
And they'll take out 32-ish ounces of water as suit stem.
Okay. All right. So they have a lot of the things that they need. Obviously, you have to plan for that if you're going to go out in space for that long. That makes a lot of sense. So let's see. How much do they weigh? That's a big question, right?
Big question and big weight.
Yeah.
So every suit, this EMU, or here I am with acronyms again, the spacesuit that our crew members use, our U.S. crew members use, is, it's designed to fit from the 5th percentile up to the 95th percentile of men and women.
Oh.
And so with that, you have certain components that are interchangeable and do not change. Was that what I mean by that is like the hard upper torso. Picture the torso of the suit.
Yes.
You've got 3 sizes, and the majority of crew members might use a large, for example, and they share that large in between. But all the pieces that connect to the suit, the arms, the gloves, the boots, those can adjust in sizing. And so if it's a smaller size, it's going to weigh less. If it's a larger size, it'll weigh more. But overall, the average weight of a spacesuit itself is about 270 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
some
pretty
weight.
heavy. Well, on Earth, right? So it's got some weight. So how would I guess 300 pounds in space would be not so hard to move around, right? I guess you're in the microgravity environment, but like we were talking about earlier, it's that pressure. It's the pressure inside where you have the gloves and you're trying to squeeze your hands, and that's kind of the hard part. Yeah.
Yeah. Our what can be our friend at time is momentum. Or inertia, and that can be an enemy at times as well when you're in that micro environment. So crew members are trained specifically to go slow along space station. If you get 300 pounds moving, it can be difficult to stop. Now they can stop it, but it's just wasted energy. So they go very slowly so they don't get that large mass moving too quickly.
I would assume it also helps with conserving energy too,
That's
right?
right.
So not only do you make sure you can have controlled movement and you're going the right pace and you don't fly everywhere. Using that limited amount of energy because you're carrying everything with you, right? When we're talking about the neutral buoyancy laboratory, you have umbilicals that hook up to all the oxygen, all the everything you want, but you only have a limited amount with you because it's like backpacking, but
Absolutely.
in space and with a lot more technology.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, so you really have to conserve. You have to make sure you have a limited amount of oxygen, so you have to breathe like slowly. Make sure your heart rate's not going up. You're calm when you're doing it. Yeah. Okay, because I remember listening when we were on the EVA, doing the EVA, like I was saying, the spacewalk. Yeah, there I go with the acronyms, right? We were doing the spacewalk just a couple weeks ago, and they were saying, you got to make sure you take your time and when you're moving around because you're out there for plan 6.5. It can go up to 7.
That's right.
Like the last one was 7 hours 4 minutes. It can go up to 8, and I think the longest spacewalk ever was almost 9. Right? It was like 6 hours 52 minutes or something like that.
It was close. That's
it's a long time to be out there, and you got to make sure you're conserving that energy. So let's talk about. You briefly mentioned that this is what the EMU is meant to do, and we were talking about you're certified to do this, that. What's happening now to design future suits, especially not because the International Space Station is going to be there for the next, hopefully, decade, I think. But after that, we're talking about deep space. We're talking about planetary exploration. What needs to change about the suit to meet those needs? Yeah,
and so we have a lot of data on what needs to change, but there's a lot of data that we don't know yet.
Right, because we haven't
been there. That's right. And so the pioneers with the high-altitude flying found, hey, my suit is only designed to go up at 5,000 feet, and now I'm at 40,000 feet. I think I'm reaching that envelope. And you need new materials. You need new vehicles. We're going to find out the same thing with the suit. What we do know is that the current spacesuit that serves fantastically at the International Space Station is not a planetary suit. Mobility will be an issue. It is not meant to walk in a gravity environment. Things we'll have to look into is even the Apollo suit, which was lighter, a little more flexible, had some design characteristics to allow the crew members to stoop down and pick up rocks where the current suit couldn't.
Right.
Even that suit, there was learning opportunities there where they didn't expect the amount of dust, dirt that would come in and get inside all the seals. And it sounds minor, but cleanliness is it can be it can have catastrophic results if you don't have a certain level of cleanliness.
That's right. They're tiny little
That's right.
things.
If they get inside sealing surfaces, you may have a leak, and a leak is something that you do not want.
Right.
When you're out doing a spacewalk.
Yeah.
So the short answer is our current suits are certified for the low Earth environment, from radiation requirements to thermal requirements to you really don't need mobility in your lower half. You just need your upper body able to move.
Makes sense.
Remember, your hands are some of the most important tools that you have on space station. Your feet and legs are near useless. They get a little bit of use, but not a whole lot. Well, planetary suits, we're going to need legs and feet. We're going to need to use them a lot.
Definitely.
As you were hitting on earlier, at the lunar activities were only for a couple of days. But if we go to Mars and if we land on Mars, we're going to be out there for a lot more than a couple of days. So we need a suit that's robust enough to support those requirements.
Okay, so I'm sure you've seen the movie The Martian, right?
I have.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It's a good movie. So in that one, when we talked about a planetary suit, they had those like skin tight kind of orange things. They looked super cool.
Awesome suit.
Yeah, they looked awesome. But then when they were up orbiting Mars and they had that whole, I don't want to, in case anyone hasn't
Spoiler
seen
alert.
it, which if you haven't seen it, what's wrong with you? You need to see it. But they had, when they were orbiting Earth, they had the EMU, right? They had that big white suit, and then it got a little tighter, skin tight. Is there a chance that maybe a planetary suit would be skin tight, or do you need those extra layers?
So, yeah, great question. It depends on what planet we go to.
Okay.
I mean, if you hit on earlier that there's a little bit of atmosphere in the low Earth orbit that protects the station to a certain extent and causes drag. Well, on Mars, there's atmosphere as well. Whereas other planets or other moons around other planets that maybe in the future we look at going to will have near zero atmosphere. That's where you need the multiple layers, like in our EMU right now. Is when you have that very minimal atmosphere.
Okay.
The Mars, we should have more of an atmosphere. What you want there, where we may get to more multiple layers, is if we need if the technology is not available to have robustness in a skin-tight suit, then you'll get the multiple layers.
Oh,
because
okay.
obviously you don't want a suit that's going to wear out and get a hole sooner, and then you're in trouble out there.
Right.
But absolutely, those skin-tight suits, like Matt Damon had in The Martian, and there's even been some played around with here in the U.S. that we've done some studies for advanced suits. Those are by far preferred in the aspects of mobility. You can move around in those a lot easier without getting pain or abrasion from multiple layers rubbing on you. You mentioned backpacking earlier. Well, if you had a couple pairs of jeans on at one time and then a number of shirts on and then a backpack, you're going to get blisters and there's going to be pain in place you don't want to feel that. That's the trade-off for if you get a suit with a lot of layers of insulation and whatnot, and then you try to walk distances,
right,
that's going to be very uncomfortable.
Yeah, if they do, they'll probably have to do short EVAs, but
that's right,
or spacewalks,
or a lunar rover.
Oh, that's where the rover comes in. So I've seen they have one here at the Johnson Space Center called the SEV. It's like an analog. They see this is, and it looks very much like the one that was in The Martian. In fact, The Martian kind of copied us, but that's fine. But
we're okay with that.
In the back, they had suits on the outside.
Yes.
There's a reason for that, right?
Yes.
And that was that dust thing that you were talking about. A little bit.
Yes, that absolutely plays into it.
Okay.
One of the cool things about the current suit we have today is that just the large percentile of individuals that can fit into it. Maybe not perfectly, but they can get inside that suit, small or large, and go out and do an EVA. Whereas the other suits that are fixed in sizing, I'm going to use it's obviously the Orlan has been great for many years, not hidden on it all, just showing some differences.
Right.
You can't change the hut size, and you either have a 37-inch to 44-inch chest, and you can fit in there, or you can't. And so there's great things about that. One of the bad things about the EMU suit, where those is that you don't get a lot of shoulder movement. And it's a lot longer to get in when you have to put the suit together on the ground with tech support. We can get them in there in 45 minutes. When they're on orbit, it's difficult to slide up inside that hard upper torso. All right, now I got to put my gloves on and helmet on. Now I got to put pants on.
Yeah.
I explain it in 20 seconds. Those guys are taking over an hour with help, professionally trained people to get inside that suit.
Right.
So you hit on that suit on the back of the vehicle. It opens up. Inside that vehicle, you can crawl into the suit from inside your vehicle without having to depressurize the whole vehicle, close that hatch on the suit, and then walk right off the back of the vehicle.
Sweet.
Pretty neat.
That's awesome. But you're right, and then you have a size thing to consider because you don't have that adjustable features of the EMU that's on station right now.
But since the EMU is designed, there is technology that's allowed us to very quickly adjust the size on some of those fixed suits that formerly we couldn't. So that's not an issue today, although it was in the 80s when we designed the EMU.
Right. Yeah. Wow. That is so cool. Okay, one more question, and then I'm going to let you go. So we talked about The Martian and those skin-tight suits, but there was one scene in there that he was kind of floating around, and well, okay, I'm not going to do any spoilers, but basically he had to.
I hear spoiler.
Okay, if you haven't seen The Martian yet, turn off the podcast. I'll give you 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so he pokes a hole in his glove on the outside, and he's gonna propel himself out of the thing. Is that like a thing? Can that happen? I mean, it probably can't be successful like it was in the Martian, but is that like a thing? If you were to poke a hole, would you propel yourself?
So there's definitely some Hollywood aspects to that.
Yeah,
no doubt about it.
Yes.
But yes, in theory, you have a pressurized suit. You've got 2 primary oxygen tanks, and then you have a secondary oxygen tank that holds just in itself about 6,000 pounds of oxygen. 6,000 pounds of pressure of oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a hole and you're pushing out air, even if it's a low force, it will get that body moving. Now, I can't tell you that it's going to fly you to a different spacecraft like in the movie,
yeah, Hollywood.
But it would be some level of propulsion, and it would help you out.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. I just love that movie. That's why I keep bringing it up.
It's a great movie.
It's a good one. Well, I think that's all the time we have. Les, thank you so much for coming on. This was so interesting, but I'm sure we did not hit all of the points about spacesuits. There's a lot more to this
My
topic.
huge binder wasn't used.
So if you're listening and you do have questions, make sure to submit them. Stay tuned till after the little ending music credits here, and then we'll talk about where you can submit some ideas, and maybe we'll do a Spacesuits #2 episode. Who knows? I'm sure there's more we can talk about. So thanks again, Les, and stick around for more on
Thanks for having me, Gary.
Spacesuits. No problem. All right.
Houston, go ahead.
Stop of the space shuttle.
Roger, 0J, and I feel
Shuttle has cleared the tower.
Became a feast for all mankind.
Actually, a huge honor to break a record like this.
Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Never Houston, welcome to space.
Hey, thanks for sticking around. So today we talked with Les Padilla about spacesuits. If you want to know more about everything spacesuits, just go to nasa.gov/suitup. We got a nice reference there for all different kinds of spacesuits, including the EMUs, mainly what we talked about today. Otherwise, you can go to nasa.gov/ISS to learn about everything going on aboard the International Space Station. And just this past month, in October, we had 3 spacewalks where astronauts were going out in the EMUs to conduct spacewalk and maintenance on the outside of the station. You can also find all this information on social media, so just go to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You know this, right? We talk about it all the time. International Space Station accounts on whatever social media platform you like. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. On Facebook, International Space Station. On Twitter, it's @space_station. And Instagram is @ISS. And in the beginning, you can see that Alley-Oop actually suggested the topic for this episode. And we're listening to everything you have to say. So just use the hashtag AskNASA on your favorite platform, and we'll submit an idea for maybe something you like to hear about, or a question you'd like to answer, or maybe you'd like to focus an entire episode on one specific topic. So we'll make sure to look at those ideas and find the right person to bring on the show. Just make sure to mention it's for HWAP, HWHAP. Houston, we have a podcast. This podcast was recorded on April 13th, 2017. Thanks to Alex Perryman, John Stoll, and Matt McKenzie. And thanks again to Les Padilla for coming on the show. We'll be back next week.